love seeing Miss Kim singing in the choir and Miss Kimber helping kids carry their plates in the fellowship hall on Wednesday nights. They are part of what it means to be a church family. Did you know that God's Protected Harbor makes it possible for these and many other ladies to overcome challenges and fully engage in our church? We'll hear about this and a whole lot more on today's episode of Here at Home. Welcome to the Here at Home podcast, a podcast about the people here at McGregor, their stories, their ministry, and their love for Jesus. My name is Danielle Flood, your host for the Here at Home podcast. Joining me on today's podcast is Alyssa Hayes with God's Protected Harbor, Christian care for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. It's such an honor to be here and talk about Protected Harbor.
Well, I am excited to get to know you more and your passion for this ministry. Why don't you start by telling us, how does God's Protected Harbor work?
So we started back in 2009, and it was a vision that a family had for their adult daughter who needed to be independent, and they knew they could no longer care for her. And so we built a home right here across the street at McGregor Baptist Church, and that was our first group home. And we have house staff, but they are Christian couples who come in, and this is their ministry, and they care for our residents. And so that house had 6 residents for the longest time. It now has 7. And we opened up a second house further down off of 41 in Fort Myers. And so now we have 2 homes. And so we have a total of 13 residents that are in our group homes.
Oh, how cool.
However, Protected Harbor offers a large gamut of other services. So we have day programming that offers respite care and the ability to provide independent living skills for adults with disabilities. So we do laundry and cooking and crafts and all kinds of community involvement and things of that nature as well. So although we have the 2 homes that are very present and prominent, there are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that offer these individuals the most independence and the best opportunities for their families to let them be independent and have some wonderful opportunities in the community.
How do most of your residents or clients get connected?
So we currently have a wait list, actually, for our homes. And for our day programs, we have one in Lee County, and we also have one in Collier County that run Monday through Thursdays, Monday through Fridays during the day. And we often just get phone calls of people who heard that, oh, we know you're a Christian organization that will help my son or my daughter. How can you help us? We've also had some families that have come from out of state who are relocating here with their parents who are a little bit older, who are maybe coming here to retire. And they have heard, I think I've never done it, but I think if you just Google Christian group homes, Protected Harbor comes up. And so we have a lot of inquiries from these families. And unfortunately, we take private pay, but when adults with disabilities, they need to have Medicaid, like a Medicaid waiver that will help pay for some of the day programming, for the supported living, transportation, all of these types of services that they might need after the age of, I believe it's 21. And so our staff, currently Robin Antone, she takes and fields all of these phone calls and helps them with the Medicaid waiver and helps them with any paperwork that they might need, helps them get linked up with things in the community or day programs, or if they need support in their homes, respite for these families.
Well, that's a ministry in itself, just the paperwork side of it, I can imagine.
The case management is a huge piece of it, and we're so blessed to have Robin as our community outreach person to handle all of that.
Just envisioning you love your child, they have needs, you're working to meet their needs. That kind of seems never ending. Like as they grow up and you see their needs aren't changing, that has to be challenging for a family.
So as a professional, I'm a speech language pathologist, and I work in the schools with children with severe disabilities. And so I see it from a very young age. And I think that and I do not have a child with a disability, but what I have seen is that they always have this hope that they're going to do more. And they have therapies, there's speech therapy, and there's physical therapy, and there's occupational therapy, horseback riding. And they do all of these things in the hopes that everybody wants the best. They want them to be the most independent individual that they can be. And everybody's independence is different, right? And so, but at the other hand, these parents are always their biggest advocate all of their lives. And these students, these individuals are in school until they're 21. And I don't think parents really think, oh, well, what happens on that day after they graduate from that transition program, or what do I do next? And I think some parents just think, well, we're always going to take care of Johnny or whomever, or maybe they have somebody in place. But I think then they get older too, and we all do, and it becomes more difficult to get them out in the community, and it becomes difficult to get them socialized, right? I mean, a 25-year-old young man with Down syndrome should be hanging out with his other 25-year-old friends and doing all of these wonderful things, bowling, arts and crafts, going to a baseball game, going to a pool party. Like, these are all of the wonderful things that they can do, but mom and dad don't need to be around.
Right.
And so, we really want to emphasize that independence piece so much.
And I love the community of that. So building reliance on other people, not your parents, and then you get to serve one another. There's dignity in that. There's hope and joy. We were created to be in community and created to serve. So I do love that about it. And I've heard that many either government programs, nonprofit, or other assistance programs maybe do start to limit ages around 18 or 21.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I know that there are a lot of facilities that you might look into if you could no longer care for your son or daughter. But Protected Harbor is so special. One, we are Christian-based and we are faith-based, and although we would never discriminate about anybody, but we do foster that. We just have. They build these friendships in the homes. They pray together. They cook together. They play together. They go to outings. They just went to Night to Shine together. So they really do build those relationships that are, like you said, are so important without their mom or dad there. They still have mom and dad on the weekends if they want, but they all have their own rooms. They have their own bathrooms. So it's like living in a dorm a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I can tell that means a lot to you. What brought you personally into this ministry?
So I think it was around 2011. One of the members of the board approached me, knowing what I did for a living, and asked if I would be willing to participate. And at that point, it was a very small board. We didn't really know what our vision was going to be. We knew we had the one home. And so I just became involved instantaneously. I mean, it's my passion. This is what I love to do. And I love to see these individuals just flourish. And they're just such a light. They really are.
So what's your role in the organization?
So currently I'm the secretary on the board, but I have provided speech therapy for certain individuals who have needed it. I have provided some support with perhaps if there's some behavioral concerns or somebody who perhaps might need pictures. I know we recently had a resident who was in the hospital and who was having difficulty communicating. So I said, well, let me come up with a core board of pictures so that perhaps he can communicate with the nurses and the staff.
Wow.
And that's what I do for a living.
Sure.
And so it becomes it's very natural for me. And thankfully I have a really great relationship with, our current community director and other staff. And so there's open communication and they know they can call me whenever. And I just, right before here, went over there and said hello to the girls, and the ladies, and they all wave, and it's just really great to see. They're just always such a light and such a joy to be around.
So how does this role that you serve, maybe, not regular, it's not like a day-to-day thing, right? It's a volunteer, ongoing, but regular thing.
Yes.
How does that resonate with your faith and your serving our community?
Well, It is a service. I offer my home for a pool party every summer, but it's not about me. It's about, this is our obligation to take care. The Lord says we need to take care of those and they need us to guide them. They need us to give them the right path, to keep them protected, to keep them safe while being as independent as possible. And so for me, I keep the students I see safe when they're in pre-K through 5th grade, and it's just such an honor for me to be able to continue to see that as they grow older, even into their 60s, which we have here at Protected Harbor. This is my duty. This is what I feel like I've been called to do. Yeah. And I know those of us who are involved in the board feel that we were called to do that. We all have different strengths that we bring, and we know that we never leave an opportunity at Protected Harbor without feeling completely fulfilled.
Right, right. So you mentioned some of your outreach ministries. Let's talk about those a little more in depth. What are the different programs that you offer, and how can church members maybe participate and serve?
Right. Well, thank you so much for asking. We could always use volunteers. Volunteers are so important for our ministry and so many other ministries. But currently we have a day program that runs 9 to 3, Monday through Friday in Lee County, and 9 to 3, Mondays and Thursdays in Collier County. Okay. And those are programs where we have individuals within both counties that would come and, like I said, do a lot of the independent skills. But in terms of our community outreach, we have, for instance, we had a Christmas party, we had a bowling party, we do arts and crafts, we get together at the Night to Shine. We had a Special Olympics right here on the campus next door. Right? Yeah, that was fantastic. And we had residents in different group homes, maybe in LaBelle, different parts of Southwest Florida, who came to join Protected Harbor in that special event of the day.
Yeah, and volunteers help put all those events on, correct?
All of those. I mean, everything takes volunteers, whether it's mailings or putting together T-shirts or making crafts with individuals. We have somebody who comes and just does mosaics with our residents. So there's always a spot to give and to give back, and knowing that you're giving, but you know you're going to get back so much more when you're around these individuals.
So if you're thinking about the ministry, how it's grown so far, what are the big goals that you're leaning into?
So it has been so exciting because, as I said, I started when there was just one home with 3 residents, and it was really small, to now having 2 homes, day programs, community outreach, case management. We have a huge vision that we are going to have our hero campus. And that's going to be a campus with different levels of housing, from independent to assistant to maybe even our elderly who are completely dependent. Because we want this to be a forever home, or we want to at least be able to provide a forever home for our individuals who need us to keep them safe until the Lord calls them home. And on this campus, we want to have therapies, and we want to have computer programming and arts and crafts and a gym and speech therapy and OT and physical therapy and social workers who can help with the social emotional aspect of it, and a chapel. And we want all of this to be on one big campus that we can just have these individuals call it home, feel safe, and get everything that they need to be just a community of love. Oh, we're so excited about this.
Do you have a region, an area, or are you still waiting on God for that?
Well, we are waiting on God patiently, but it would most likely be in the Southwest Florida region right now. I mean, the numbers in Florida of adults with disabilities who are still living at home with their parents it's astounding. And we know that this is an area that could really use this type of facility. And so that's our vision, and we're starting out. Like I said, we have a waiting list already, and we don't know where God is going to lead us. And and in his timing, really, at this point.
Yeah.
And we have some individuals who live in their homes, but we just go into their homes and offer a little bit of support. And there also may be those who live independently, but we only go in for a couple of hours a day, just to make sure that the groceries are done, the bills are paid, the house is clean. But really, for the most part, they're independent. So there's just so many levels in which Protected Harbor can support families and these individuals. And we look forward to being able to do it all for them.
Yeah. So I have a friend who is not... it's hard to say. So she's challenged in some ways, but very independent in others. And she had the good benefit to grow up with her grandmother. And then her grandmother passed away. And I'm sure that there are others in that situation where the caregiver that was making that situation tenable is no longer there, aging, like you said. And she's not very... able to live on her own. You know, she's challenged with choices and budgeting and making those, and it's unsafe. And so it's hurting. It hurts me, it hurts others.
We actually just had a resident with a very similar situation. Both of his parents passed away, and he was actually taking care of his parents. And
wow.
Doing a fairly good job at that as well. So devoted to his family, and was always told he will never live in a home. He will never, and we have to remember and put in perspective that a grandparent taking care of, say, a 40-year-old, a 50-year-old, or a 60-year-old, when they grew up, people with disabilities were put in places that were not safe.
No.
And this is decades ago.
Sure.
So if you have to change that mindset for somebody who's older, so when you're told all the time you can't ever go into a group home,
right.
That's an old mindset, because Protected Harbor is offering such a different, a totally different opportunity. But for this particular gentleman, he really wanted to stay as independent as possible. And there were, thank goodness, church members, church family, and people who rallied around him to say, this isn't safe. You're driving independently. It's not safe anymore. You're not managing your money and your health. We need to worry about your health. And by the grace of God, God spoke to him one day and he said he was ready. And he's currently living in one of our homes, and he is thriving. And I went out for him with for his birthday dinner a couple of weeks ago. And he knew the manager of the restaurant that we went to, because he works at a Publix, where he often sees this gentleman. I mean, what a community. Who goes out for dinner? And he knew more people in the restaurant than I could ever imagine. Yeah. So, agreed. It is a difficult situation. It is not a decision that parents have an easy time making. They have to assign guardians. There's paperwork, and there's a lot. But we, and I know our community outreach director always advocates for starting early and making these plans ahead of time, so that you do have a plan of action. So you're not waiting until there's an unfortunate circumstance.
What is your advice for maybe a church member or a friend that has no decision-making role in it, but wants to either help direct, guide, love, and suggest kind of either a group home idea or a day activity idea, just the community of knowing they're not alone?
I think I've been in a situation where you do need to tread lightly, because this is such a personal decision. But I do think, of course, our doors are always open, and mentioning Protected Harbor, talking about the programs that we have, and just giving it a try. And I have a close friend who's currently leaving her son with severe autism alone in a group home for the first time this weekend. And I said to her, you will never know until you try. And the first time might not be great. The second time might be better. And the third time, it might be the best. You don't know until you try. And give them that opportunity, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I would say reach out to Protected Harbor. Look for these different community resources that are out there that can help you to get your loved one to be as independent, get involved in bowling and Special Olympics, or like you said, these day programs where they can just socialize and you see them blossom from somebody who's relying on you to walk them through the door and carry their bags to 4 weeks later saying goodbye from the car, walking independently into their day program, putting their bags away, unpacking their backpack, sitting down, serving others a snack, and becoming completely independent. You don't know what they're capable of until you give them that opportunity.
Yeah. So I definitely want to hear more stories about that. Like, what is one of your favorite, like, aha, God is working here moments that you love to share? Or
you're going to make me cry. There is a resident at one of our homes who's been there quite a long time now. I don't know how long she's been there, but she came to us non-speaking. Non-oral speaking, I should say. She had a lot to say, that's for sure. And she did it with her gestures, but she came from a very unsafe home. And without getting into details, there wasn't any eye contact. She wore sunglasses. She stayed in her room. She didn't want to have any social communication, and she wasn't speaking. And I was asked to come and try to help her with her speaking. And when I tell you I worked with her, thankfully, I had my summer at that point. I had my young kids at home, and I had my summer where I was able to take a day a week and come up here. And I worked with her and literally started working with her, blowing whistles and bubbles, if you can imagine. And it was just so that she could help feel the airflow from her mouth, knowing that that airflow could eventually produce sound. And it wasn't that that she didn't know that. By the way, she's brilliant. She's taught herself Japanese. She's an incredible artist. She reads Japanese. She is amazing. She is a flutist and has a plethora of other strengths. But we didn't know that because it was so hidden inside of her. And so after probably a year of working with her, to see her today where she's gotten up on stage and she's played her flute, she's painted and created masterpieces that we've put on work, or flyers that we've had to hand out. And now she socializes. She goes out to things like the Night to Shine with her friends, gets dressed up, and she participates in the nightly dinners and preparation of the food and so on and so forth. She rides horses. I mean, she does it all. She's amazing. And so that was I want to say that's one of my most memorable times, is because it was started so early on. And to see her from where she was and knowing her history to where she is today, it's like night and day. But I could go on. They all have their story. They all have their story of where they were once dependent to now where they're completely independent. They have their own room. They have their own hobbies, their own, come Alyssa, come look at my phone, look at my pictures. And they ask me about my family. They know my family. I feel like I've grown up with these residents. It's really amazing.
Well, me too, because I see them at church weekly almost, and we love that we get to pass in the hallways. They know my kids. They would make those, hand glove chickens.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay.
Like, he does not need another chicken, but he loved it. And so they still remember that and talk about it. And I do, love that ministry of the church and the opportunity to be connected and to teach people, our community, what it is to love. We are to care for people. We are to love and serve, and, not just the easy ones.
And I will tell you, they always put a smile. They have, they say childlike faith. They have the ability to see joy in every single thing. And I'm not saying they don't have bad days, because they do. They're human. They're just like, anybody else. But they do. They find joy, and they're smiling, and they're happy to see you, and they just love the little things. So, on the day that you're looking down and you're thinking this isn't great, just think, wow, how blessed you are. You have all of your capacities. You can make decisions. You can live on your own. And how can I help somebody else to see their strengths and to blossom and to make them the best person they possibly can be?
Yeah.
I know my own sons, when I went over there, they said, Howard Frick Frack and Jr., they call them, because I have twin boys and another younger one who are older now. But my sons grew up with Protected Harbor. Protected Harbor, they know, is a huge part of my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are your greatest needs if someone was asking, church member, volunteer or otherwise?
Right. So we have a website, godsprotectedharbor.org. You can go to the website, and we always have, you can go on our mailing list. There's opportunities there to give. There's an opportunity to become part of our mailing list. And when we send out our mailing list, we always have some needs. It might be a grill. It might be a shelving unit. It might be a mattress, something of that nature. And of course, all of our volunteers that we need for any of our upcoming events that will be listed on our website. Like I said, on March 22nd, we have our annual luncheon. We will be having a speaker by the name of Chris Nikic, and he is the first adult with Down syndrome to complete an Ironman competition.
Oh, how fun.
Oh, yeah, I know. I have difficulty on the treadmill, and he completed the Ironman. So I'm really excited to meet him, and I know it's going to be exciting for a lot of other members in the community with children with Down syndrome or other disabilities to meet him and see the book that he wrote, 1% Better. Because don't we always want to be 1% better every day?
I read a book about 1% compounds. And so if you get 1% better like every day, you gain skills and, muscle mass and ideas, and it's amazing.
Every day.
So, every day.
I think about that now. I'm like, okay, I need to be 1% better today than I was yesterday.
Yeah. So what has God been teaching you recently?
I think with this whole, personally, or through Protected Harbor, in my volunteer work, God has definitely been teaching patience and asking Him for guidance and waiting on His timing. We want everything now. And we can be impatient because this is such a wonderful ministry, and we want to help thousands and thousands of adults with disabilities. But we also know that we want to do it correctly, and we wanted to do it with God as as our lead, and we need to wait. So that's the main thing I'm being taught.
Yeah. And I love that you get to serve both in your professional life and your volunteer life, and that your kids have grown up seeing that. Mine are still pretty young, but we want them to see a life of service, because that is what we're called to do. That is the church, Well, thank you so much for coming and talking today.
Thank you.
This wraps up our episode of Here at Home. Thank you, listeners, for being part of our Here at Home podcast community. If you haven't yet subscribed to this podcast, please take a moment to click that button. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks here at home.